Here we are again, live from the world headquarters of Pro Cannabis Media, just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. This is Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And joined every week by me, his trusty sidekick, David Rabinovitz. And we've got some great guests today, Jimmy.
We always do, David. You know, one thing I think we should ask people to do is like, share, and subscribe to all of the Pro Cannabis Media content, especially on YouTube. We're only 78 subscribers away from 7,000. So I really hope that we can make a little bit of a drive here and see if we can get over that 7,000 mark. We've grown quite a bit over the last month or so, about 1,500 subscribers, and we've had 90,000 views over the last 28 days of our work. So we're very proud of that. And we're also very proud of the guests and the quality of the guests that we're able to attract every Friday afternoon. And we want to thank one in particular and a certain agency. It would be the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association. We are members of that, and their Director of Government Relations, Michael Correia. While he kind of pops in every once in a while and he joins us here this Friday. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's always great to be here. And I wonder what the weather's like in Boston, because it's wonderful today. So I'm just enjoying this summer weather, and it's always a pleasure talking with you guys.
I think it's really, I think we all have realized how much we appreciate the time that you have in good weather outside, enjoying friends and family after the year and a half that we've all gone through as a country here. And I think that is why you're seeing a lot of increase in tourism. I spent last weekend in the great state of Maine and didn't have Wi-Fi and actually didn't watch television for 48 hours, which I've got to admit, guys, that may have been the first 48 hours that I haven't been around a TV in probably 40 years. So anyway, Michael, tell us what's going on in Washington, D.C. and how challenging has it been trying to lobby for the COA bill that's out there that the U.S. Senate put out there a few weeks ago?
So a couple things. One, normally I would be saying it's the dog days of summer and we're getting into August recess, and nothing's really going on, and all the Hill staffers are going on vacation. It's going to be great. You know, Chuck Schumer wanted to put a little wrinkle in that and drop his big cannabis bill a couple of weeks ago. And actually, he hasn't dropped it yet. It's still a discussion draft. They put it out there for the world to see. 163-page bill. They have a great summary. And so, honestly, normally, even though I am going to be going on vacation starting tomorrow, and I'm going to have a nice vacation, we are spending this entire month deciphering that bill, seeing what's in that bill. We're going through it internally, seeing what's in that bill, what the industry likes, what it doesn't like, what we can support, what we can't support. And we're going to be giving comments, one, to the general public about what we think about the bill. And then second, we are going to reach out to the Hill staffers, these congressional offices at the end of this month. They've asked for comments by September 1st. And by then, we are going to give them our comments of what we like and what we dislike about the bill. And honestly, most of the focus is on that bill. They've been talking about it for about 6 months. They finally dropped it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chuck Schumer talks about it for the next 18 months and tries to get as much media out of this as possible. So most of my energy is directed on that bill, seeing what's in that bill and making sure we get a response. Now, we're 99% certain we're going to be supporting most provisions of that bill, but I represent the industry, and there's probably going to be some provisions in there that maybe we think don't work, we think are bad, or maybe we don't think everyone thought it through exactly what it means. And one of the biggest issues is going to be related to the tax component of that bill. Let's be honest with you, we've had this experiment going on in Colorado, Washington State for many years. This didn't just happen yesterday. And we have 8 good years to see sort of what worked and what didn't work. And I want to make sure our policymakers see that. And when they put tax provisions in there that were sort of not really workable, I want to make sure they hear and we build a good case on that. So although I'm going on vacation next week, I'm going to be spending most of this next month letting them know where we stand on the bill. And that's going to be most of our energy over the next month or so.
Michael, go ahead, Jimmy.
No. David, you go. Go ahead, David.
So are you seeing any sort of correlation of Senate support with state legalization? Meaning, if a state's legalized, that the senators, the federal senators, have actually gotten on board and are now in favor of what their citizens have done.
So common sense, the former Hill staffer in me, common sense says yes, but the reality sometimes isn't directly that way. And so I'll give you examples. A lot of times you have a big city, like a Portland, Maine, or a Portland, Oregon, or a Denver that's really blue, and then the rest of the state, maybe around it, is really red. And sometimes you have, Maine is a perfect example. It's been legal for a few years now. I mean, the initiative passed Maine, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And I can't say that Senator Susan Collins has been the greatest champion of that. She's sort of coming around to some of these issues. So I tend to agree with you. You would think that once a state legalizes, their senators would say, listen, this is legal in my state, I'm going to support it. But some of them are just really opposed to this issue. They don't really believe in it. And sometimes it's a little kicking and screaming. They come around to it, but it is not as straightforward as you would expect. And, you're starting to see, cannabis reform take shape in the South. You see it in Mississippi. You see it past Florida, overwhelmingly past Florida, medical, 70%. Or the Florida senators raising their hands saying, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get on this cannabis reform train. And so it doesn't line up as much as you think it would. It still tends to be a blue issue, a blue state issue. These senators, Democrats, get it more than others. But you are seeing this with this Schumer bill. Schumer says something, and then the next day you see Democratic senators line up and say, well, I'm not supportive of legalization, even though maybe it's legal in their state. So it isn't as directly related as I would hope, but it makes it a lot easier. A perfect example is Dianne Feinstein in California. It's one of the biggest industries in California. It's billions of dollars. It's been legal medical for 25 years, indirectly. It's been legal adult use for 3, 4, 5 years now. And someone like Dianne Feinstein, you would think she would be supportive. And I try to make the parallels. If this was the wine industry coming to Dianne Feinstein's office and say, this is a legal industry in your state, it's worth billions of dollars, please help us, I guarantee you she would be helping. But something like cannabis, they don't line up and do the same thing. I think it's going to take more time, and it's going to be more elections for these people to retire or get voted out before they truly changes their positions.
I was actually going to ask you to follow up about term limits, and it is an issue out there in our world of politics. And this is a perfect example of why I think it's so important that we turn over our elected officials in Washington, D.C., so they can be more in tune with what people in their state want them to represent at the federal level. But again, me, I'm from Massachusetts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I do want to ask a question that came up in the chat room already, because I am now able to actually monitor it, and that's a big step for me. The Delta 8 question, Delta 8 versus Delta 9, Delta 9 being the THC variable that is from the actual cannabis sativa plant. Delta 8 is one of those gray areas that creates THC from perhaps more hemp products and chemistry and all that neat stuff. Where does the industry stand on Delta? Is this another one of those gray areas that the industry still is wrapping its hands around?
So we had a webinar on this issue, and when this first came to my attention a few months ago, I was like, Delta 8? Wait, what's that? A new Chuck Norris movie? Is it like a sorority? Like, what is this Delta 8?
You're dating yourself, Michael. Go ahead.
And then as I started learning more about it, I really thought about the policy implications. And to me, this is a perfect example of an unintended consequence of policy that everyone's thinking, oh, great, hemp is, safe. Here's hemp, it's safer. It's an agricultural commodity, CBD, we're good. And then you're able to produce this Delta 8 out of this. Right. And now people are, supposedly getting intoxicated from it. Where does that fly? Is it hemp? Is it a regulated issue? And that's one of the things I want to make sure the industry, or at least NCIA, is well informed on this. We did a webinar. We had some great speakers. Honestly, we're sort of formulating our position right now directly on that. But it's about making sure that the regulators just regulate cannabinoids in general of whatever's happening. And you just have that position to where, if there's a Delta 10 or 11 or 12 or something else comes out from some great science experiment, making sure the policy catches up. Because on something like this, there could be some pushback, from the public who doesn't know what this is, and people are going and consuming this product and what's in it. Is this going to be the next K2 or Spice, or what exactly is this? So I want to make sure, we are, when we take a position on this, it's well thought out. We're looking at all the sides, we're getting the education, we're informing the policymakers. But I think this is a perfect example of an unintended consequence, a gray market sort of area, that the regulations need to catch up with the science.
Right. Absolutely. And leading with the science has been, you're the best weapon in your pocket, I'm guessing, because that's how we've been able to move the needle a lot of it, actually, in this country. I wonder, and going back to David's comment, some states actually have Republicans and Democrats talking to each other, looking for common ground, so they may find some answers to move forward with their legalization. And I'm talking about a state, specifically New Hampshire, where we've interviewed some House of Representatives from both sides, and they are actually looking and doing that. But you don't hear a lot of that from Washington, D.C., do you, Michael?
So are you saying at the state level?
At the state level, they're looking for answers. Yeah.
Honestly, I hate to be a cynic, but it seems like more of the action is happening at the state level, where people have to solve problems and they have to work together to get the issues done. I've been in DC 25 years, and they just argue about arguing, and they never want to take a position. They never want to solve an issue, because like cannabis, it's an easily solvable issue. I think one, you can deschedule it. You can push it to the states, let the states work out a lot of these issues, because they're already working it out, getting out of the way. But people are still arguing about cannabis at the federal level when the states are already doing it. Like, to me, the discussion has already been going on for many years now. But I do see that more and more, where state policymakers tend to get together to solve problems, and federal people tend to get on their sides and just talk about the issues and campaign on the issues, but not truly get together and try to solve a problem.
Yep. The Senate Appropriations Committee approved an amendment to the annual budget in 2022 that will allow the veterans to have access to, or at least have referrals be prepared for them if they go to the VA hospital. A couple of years ago, they tried this amendment before. It didn't get very far because of the bipartisan atmosphere in Washington, D.C. It was our lead story in our news. We talked to a local veteran who's been an advocate in the cannabis community here in Massachusetts, Stephen Mandilli, for a long time. He's actually encouraged that this time around, this actually may stand and will pave the way for veterans to have access to medicinal programs at the VA. Do you sense that might happen?
So one, just to not get too into the DC Beltway policy weeds about what goes on in government, how our government operates, appropriations is something they do annually. So even if it passes, it can change next year and the year after. They have to do it every single year. It's to fund the government. In that, you have policymakers have the ability to write into legislation tying the hands of government, saying it can or can't do something, and you can actually have some fun with that. The problem is the budget process is sort of broken in DC, like a lot of things. Democrats can't agree with Republicans. Republicans can't agree with Democrats. House members can't agree with Senate members. And so a lot of times they just fund the government, and they say, you know what, we're just going to abdicate our responsibilities. We're just going to fund the government with whatever we funded last year, which is a continuing resolution, instead of doing a normal budget. So yes, the Senate did an appropriations, but it has to pass the Senate in the entire Senate, which is a rarity. They have 13 appropriations bills, so it's one. They have 12 more to go. And just for the House and the Senate to agree on something, it doesn't happen often. So yes, I'm excited. It's better than nothing. But until the House and Senate really start getting together, our official position on appropriations are, until it starts moving, until this process isn't broken down anymore, like, I'm not going to get too excited on something like this. And, we passed the Rohrabacher-Farr provision 7 years ago, which sort of tied the hands of DOJ, DEA, going after medical in states. We haven't done anything since. And that's not because we haven't tried. It's because the system's been broken down and they've not wanted to do anything. They've not wanted to add anything since then. And so until that system changes, with the Democrats in charge, it could be a little easier. But right now, I'm not holding my breath. And even if it passes, it's great, but it's for the next year and they got to fight it over the year after and year after and year after. And at one time it was our only vehicle, but now we're actually, talking about SAFE. We're talking about, this comprehensive reform, the MORE Act. So the discussion has changed in DC.
David, you got a question? Because I do, if you don't.
Well, I'll let you go because my question, we've sailed past that particular topic. I happen to think we've gotten to the point of gridlock in Washington where it doesn't matter whether you agree with the issue and you want to help shape the issue. It's if the other side brings the issue forward, then you want to kill it no matter what. And it's counterproductive. It's not good, but hopefully people are going to wake up at some point and say, vote him out. We'll get Willie Nelson up on the stage with that great song of his, vote him out.
You bring up a good point because, if you're a Democrat and you put something forward, just instinctively Republicans are going to say, vote it down. Mm-hmm. And there isn't a lot of, okay, what's the issue? Let's try to solve the issue. They can campaign and they go back to their constituents and they raise a bunch of money by just taking the opposite approach.
Yeah, we stopped the Democrats versus we actually tried to get something across the line that more people in this state tend to like than me, so to speak.
And exactly to your point, everyone thinks, oh, why would I give the other side a victory? Well, I mean, you keep going that, eye for an eye, and next thing you know, nothing gets done. And that's, it's frustrating because, I come from a world of compromise where you give up a little, you get a little, and then you both get something. Right. And then you can campaign and say, we got this and we got that. And I think voters are smart enough, but who knows, we get the Congress that we deserve in our democracy. And that's, what we have.
Yep. Well, I really think that it was Schumer's plan. That's why he went for the home run, the grand slam, legalization, the whole Administrative and Opportunity Act that they put forth with the expectation that there might be some give and take, but that may be naive to think that these two sides could actually find common ground. And I just wonder what the fallback strategy may be of the leading Democrats in the Senate if they find that this is a complete stalemate. Any idea on that?
So on that, strategically, I totally agree. I think this is a political document. If you want to solve cannabis at the federal level, you need to be bipartisan on some level. Right. For the most part, for something to get through the Senate, you need 60. So that means you're going to need 10 Republicans minimal to get something. And let's make it a home run. Let's get 15 Republicans. So to me, if Chuck Schumer wanted to solve this issue, he would find 2 or 3 Republicans and sit down and say, hey, guys, what works? Right. And then drop a bill. Okay, you drop a bill with Schumer, Booker, and Wyden. Who's the Republican that's going to get on this bill? Right. Just start lining up. And I could go through a list and I don't see anyone. So to me, is it a campaign, a political document that he's showing that he's just going to campaign on, or does he really want to solve the issue? And on the House side, you saw Dave Joyce from Ohio drop a bill that deschedules and addresses a lot of other issues. At least the House and Dave Joyce are trying to do something to have a discussion point. And like, hey, what can we get 218 members of Congress, 60 senators, and the president to agree on? And that's the discussion point. It isn't just political, scoring political points. I want to make sure like we're moving the policy needle. And that was really frustrating seeing Cory Booker come out there and say, oh, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop an easy safe banking bill passed. What's so easy about safe banking? We've been working on it for 8 years. It still hasn't passed. We have 9 Republicans co-sponsor. Like, it isn't easy. It's a lot of work. It would move the chains, and it would help a lot of small businesses get access to finance. And I think it helps the cause. So I think it's a little annoying when he does something like this, because I don't think it furthers the cause. So to your point, what can we get over the finish line? SAFE's a perfect example of what we can get over the finish line. It's bipartisan. We have the votes. We have the numbers. It's been around. Like, let's focus on that and comprehensive reform at the same time, which we're supporting.
Isn't descheduling, if you take it off one and you either completely remove it from the controlled substances world, or there's a Schedule 3 that may be available too, that could open up the banking. So if you deschedule it, isn't that a counter effect that you would also have banking?
So, I mean, there's rescheduling, put it into 2, 3, 4, 5,
yep.
Which we're not supportive of.
Right.
If it was in 3, the 280E provision doesn't apply. I think safe banking would be easier because of where it's scheduled. But let's be honest, we're not going to be better off in a world where cannabis is Schedule 3 drug. We're better off in a world where it is delisted, but then we regulate it however we want to regulate it. And we have good, strong regulations in place. And it's like alcohol, to where alcohol is regulated, but it's not looked upon as a drug. And so I want cannabis the same way, where it's out there. There's regulations. Who gets it? How do you get it? What are costs? What do you need to do with it? But it's not a heavily regulated or a heavily, Schedule 2 or 3 drug that's going to be like pharma, where you have to go to the doctor to get. That's not something we want. But we want a regulated industry. That's the best way for this to happen. So NCIA's position is delist it, and treat it like alcohol. Let the states deal with this and get a good regulatory structure. So I'm not out there to say reschedule. I'm out there talking about deschedule. And for the most part, we need bills that deschedule. It's going to be deschedule. And then what do you do after that,
Right. But it does, the cause and effect means if you deschedule, it opens up the bank. So there's a win-win on one side. And yet I would think that the other side might think, well, it's still under control. I'm looking for that common ground. I'm looking for that magic thing that will move the needle from making it just a political issue and actually giving the Republicans some kind of a win here that won't hurt the industry.
So, Jimmy, let me throw something in. Descheduling marijuana does not solve the banking problem. The national banks are not going to touch it, because once it's descheduled, it's in limbo at the federal level. That's kind of good for the industry in a lot of ways. Now you look to the states, and that means that if it's legal in Massachusetts, but it's illegal in Nebraska, no national bank is going to touch it if they have offices and do business in Nebraska, which in some ways it's a nice thing, because it means the small local banks will jump in.
This issue is right in the middle of everything: politics, economy, social justice. And, I know Senator Booker, believes it is a social justice bill, not just banking. And I think that was his point at that news conference. And I give him credit for actually being passionate about it. But perhaps, this better than me, Michael. It's a game, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, I mean, it is a social justice issue.
Right.
But, to his point, we need to be working and addressing the harms of the war on drugs. But we need to get something over the finish line, and we need to pass something. And if the numbers aren't there for comprehensive reform, we need to pivot and go to something that can help. We can't wait for 10 years for that day to happen. Now, you talk about, until they deschedule. Well, the states are going forward now. It's under the Controlled Substances Act. It hasn't stopped. What are we at now? 16 states, 17 states? I lose track because there's so many.
Well, that's up for debate too. I mean, it's as many as 19 and in some reports.
Yeah. And so some states are moving forward, but, could the industry be better off if they didn't have the 280E provision? Of course. Would the small businesses be better off if they didn't have to deal with the banking issue of paying all these fees just to maybe have financial services or not deal with that.
Yeah.
It is one of these issues that they're going forward, but we want to make sure this is an industry that small businesses can still thrive in, and it's not just like 5 or 10 companies eat up everyone else. Right. And the longer this plays out, the big businesses have an advantage because they already have access to money. They can just wait out the market. And 10 years from now, when legalization happens, there's going to only be 5 big companies because they've bought out everyone else. So we need to make sure we have a level playing field. And I think the best way to do that is legalize, deschedule sooner, give these businesses access to banking. So then there's a level playing field, and then everyone can fight it out and we go from there.
Right. Well, Michael, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. I think you need a vacation. Okay. Get some rest, enjoy yourself with your family, and you'll be ready to go in a week or two. So, because I got to tell you, this is going to be hazardous duty pay for you. I do not relish your job description, because I think that this is a very tough sell in Washington, D.C.
So, thank you. And I am going on vacation next week to the beach. It's going to be wonderful in North Carolina. But, there is a lot going forward. There's a momentum. It's something, it's an exciting time because we have the leader of the Senate who's excited about wanting to do something. And so we just need to get the votes. We need to do the work. But there is a lot of work, and I hate to say it, there's politics involved, but it's like, I wish more people were realistic about their approach. And I wish Cory Booker just understood that a lot of small businesses, a lot of communities of color would benefit with having safe banking. There shouldn't be a trade-off of, only big banks are going to be making money off this. Yeah. And I wish that narrative wasn't continually pushed, but it is. And I hate to say, like, Cory Booker should be on every bill. He shouldn't be picking and choosing. And then, once they drop this bill, great, it's out there. Let's start fighting for this. Let's start fighting for the MORE Act, fighting for all these bills that move this. So it's an exciting time. I'm always excited. I love my job. I have the best job in America, and I'm going to enjoy my vacation. And I really enjoy talking with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
We like having you on.
We love having you on. Enjoy your time in North Carolina. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media, supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.